Unidentified monsters suddenly gathered at the mountain's edge, quickly surrounding a family who had sought refuge at the foot of the mountain. However, the only shelter at the foot of the mountain, its sturdy steel door, was firmly shut from the inside. The people outside desperately pounded on the steel door, exhausting themselves, but the person inside remained unmoved. Meanwhile, the monsters surged towards the foot of the mountain like a tidal wave. If the people inside didn't open the steel door soon, they would be brutally beaten to death, not even sparing a bone fragment. The monsters were stubbornly determined to charge down. The girl was so anxious that she even pulled up her clothes to hold the door open, but the person inside still pretended to be dead. In desperation, David had no choice but to risk everything. He grabbed a crowbar, determined to fight to the death and give his family a way out, but unexpectedly, at the last moment, the door suddenly opened. Yes, the geological workers scrambled into the disaster site, barely closing the door before the deafening roar of a plane crashing outside. What a close call! But their escape had only just begun, for terrifying monsters like these had now taken over the entire world. Most frighteningly, these monsters didn't appear out of nowhere. They were humans emerging from a depth of 10,000 meters underground. This story dates back 15 years. The Geological Exploration Company was conducting a drilling operation. When the borehole reached nearly 10,000 meters deep, a sudden scene appeared on the monitoring screen. All the staff heard a chilling sound. The technicians then pushed the drill bit down another 300 meters, only to find it jammed. The composite image showed a group of unidentified creatures, never seen before, climbing up the drill pipe. The staff zoomed in, but couldn't identify the species. Several veteran technicians were dumbfounded. This was 10,000 meters deep. To figure out what was happening, one technician risked going outside to investigate, only to be unexpectedly attacked by a monster with no legs. Subsequently, all the technical staff perished without a trace. In the same incident, the project team discovered a large number of giant bird-like monsters outside their windows. The entire exploration base was shrouded in these monsters, and the depths of the well seemed to have opened the gates of hell, continuously releasing various unknown creatures into the outside world. They rapidly spread, flying across the globe, quickly filling the skies with dark clouds. As if responding to some unseen call, they launched a ferocious attack on the unsuspecting humans. These monsters not only soared through the skies, but also raced across the land, tearing apart anyone they caught and wantonly destroying humanity's proud red-tailed buildings. This sudden, global attack was unprecedented. In less than 15 hours, the monsters had spread across the world. Countries around the world urgently mobilized fighter jets for frantic strafing and launched continuous missile bombardments, but they were unable to inflict any substantial damage on monsters. Within just a few hours, the world's continents gradually descended into irreversible devastation. Humanity was forced to launch a more powerful counterattack. Aircraft carriers set sail en masse, racing to engage the monsters, and nuclear warheads were unsealed and deployed to the front lines. It was a fight to the death against the monsters. However, the monsters' numbers continued to grow, seemingly endless. Humanity had exhausted all its resources, but still couldn't find any effective means to resist this catastrophe. Soon, land and sea were under attack from all directions by the monsters. Humanity was utterly helpless. Major cities were reduced to ruins, and millions perished. Everyone thought this disaster would be the end of humanity, but unexpectedly, 24 hours later, the monsters suddenly ceased their work, all burrowing back underground as if they had completed some kind of mission, completely disappearing from the human world. This left humanity utterly baffled. Later, according to the investigation, the day the drilling site accident occurred happened to be a full sun hour, and these monsters could only leave hell and roam freely under the protection of the sun hour. So when the full day disappeared, they would flee in terror, seeking refuge in hell. But strangely, there had been full days before, and the monsters hadn't appeared then. And later, full days appeared again, but the monsters didn't reappear. Some even speculated that this might be God's way of settling scores. Therefore, the day of the monster invasion was called the Purge, a day to mourn the victims of the disaster and prevent a recurrence. Humanity sealed off the monsters' movements, calling it the gates of hell, but no one knew if the disaster would return when the next full day arrived. So countries around the world began reconstruction while establishing dedicated homeland security departments, converting drilling sites into military bases, and equipping deep fissures around the world with military facilities to prevent the monsters from wreaking havoc again. Thus, humanity lived in fear for 15 years, seemingly having forgotten the disaster. Laura, recently divorced, was preparing to start a new life. As agreed, she sent her son, Tai Lao, to her ex-husband David's place, planning to accept her new boyfriend's invitation for dinner that evening. However, just as David saw Laura off and was about to have a good chat with his son, David's uncle suddenly called, urging the father and son to flee immediately. Another calamity was approaching. To be on the safe side, he urgently notified David and his son to take refuge at his home. After the first day of hardship, David's uncle began making plans, remembering that life is precious and should be cherished. Soon, ominous signs began to appear around the world. First, rare earthquakes occurred at defense bases. Then, mass deaths of marine life were discovered along the Gulf Coast. All signs indicated that humanity would face another devastating disaster in 24 hours. Just like 15 years ago, a monster army from another world was about to launch a second attack. Fortunately, this time humanity was prepared, having built shelters in various locations. News reports also urged everyone to prepare for evacuation in advance. David quickly received the news and called to urge him to send his son back so they could go to the shelter together, as his friend in the county had already reserved a spot through connections. Although it was uncertain whether the demon army would reappear, avoiding the day of reckoning was the safest course of action. Just as David was about to tell his son, he discovered that his son was nowhere to be found. It turned out that his son had recently started dating a girlfriend. At that moment, he was lying in an open park with his girlfriend, looking at the blue sky and white clouds. His girlfriend was worried about the monster crisis that might come tomorrow, saying that she didn't want to die so young. Before she could finish speaking, suddenly, bird song filled the sky, and in the distance a flock of birds flew, blocking out the sun, frantically swarming about like a boiling pot. This meant that the reckoning was about to begin, and panic spread rapidly. People frantically rushed to the shelters outside the city, and the city was instantly paralyzed, turning into a parking lot. Amidst the chaos of people searching for his son, David looked up at the sky. He noticed that the behavior of the flock of birds foreshadowed the approaching crisis. At this moment, his friend sent him a location, and he successfully located Taylor's position using his phone's GPS, telling David to go and meet him there immediately. Earlier, Laura and her current boyfriend were preparing to pick them up. Humans were fleeing in an emergency. The wealthy could hide in shelters, but ordinary people were left to fend for themselves. The worst part was that, even before the day had officially begun, a hellhound from hell had already infiltrated the heavily fortified base. An unfortunate soldier was cornered and brutally devoured by the hellhound, which was spurred by bone spikes. Chaos erupted, with animals fleeing en masse, just like the billion-strong demon army of 15 years ago. David finally found his son in the square using the location tracking. As the father and son struggled, the catastrophe alarm sounded in the square, and David quickly led them to pick them up. Meanwhile, Laura and the county magistrate also sensed the situation and joined David and his son. The family then rushed to the shelter, but some people could only flee aimlessly. Most absurdly, while everyone else was running for their lives, some people were dressed strangely. Fortunately, these monsters had all escaped, but they themselves had been escaped because their son had been escaped. Chaos erupted as animals fled in a mass exodus, mirroring the billions of demons that appeared 15 years ago. The family frantically tried to break free from a forbidden barrier, but some were forced to flee aimlessly. Most absurdly, some were dressed in bizarre costumes while everyone else was escaping for their lives. These monsters seemed to revel in death. When David and his group finally arrived at the barrier, they were told it was overcrowded. Only fathers, daughters, and children were allowed in. Adult men were refused entry. Everyone was stunned. Initially, David decided to send Laura with the two children, but Laura, unwilling to let her father face the disaster alone, suddenly ran away. Although David had divorced his ex-wife, they were still family, and they were determined to fight to the death. David decided to leave the barrier with his family and drive to meet his uncle in the desert. His house, with its vaulted storehouse, could protect against demonic invasion. However, they encountered a severe traffic jam on the way. Just as everyone was at a loss, the ground suddenly shook violently, and the sun had arrived as scheduled. The demon army that the younger brother had summoned surged out of the cave like a machine, thousands upon thousands of flying monsters and four-legged crawling monsters emerging from a sky as if stepping on stones. The scene was unprecedented. At this moment, the sun drew back the curtains, and the entire sky instantly turned dark. Countless monsters quickly appeared above the city. David, strong and capable, prepared to lead everyone out of the city immediately. He knew a shortcut out of the city and wanted to drive himself. However, his current boyfriend firmly objected, simply because the car was his. Just as they were arguing heatedly, a large bird monster swooped down and snatched the ex-wife boyfriend away like a chick. The monster launched a full-scale attack, grabbing more and more people and tossing them around like toys in the air. David, terrified, quickly grabbed his ex-wife and son and sped away from this dangerous place. The entire road was completely blocked, so they could only try to escape along the river. Strangely, the giant bird monster chasing them suddenly braked, as if an even more terrifying danger awaited them. Fortunately, it wasn't a rainy season, and the river was clear. They quickly found an empty car, but as soon as he opened the door and sat in the driver's seat, he felt someone pressing down on his shoulder from behind. There was also an old man hiding in the back seat. At that moment, a monster was frantically devouring humans right in front of them.